Welcome to Roundhill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy and the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we're talking about when we talk about faith. Hey, Ed.
How you doing, Leslie?
I'm good. Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, indeed.
To Roundhill Radio. We're so glad to have you. And welcome to week 31 of our 52 for the journey. We're shaking our heads as we seem to always do that as we go through the week. And this one is a long one. And so I'm turning it over to our pro level reader.
I'm only here for editorial work, so I'm gonna condense things a little bit. So
our reading in the book, if you have the book, it is Ezekiel 34, 1 through 16. We're using the English Standard Version, and you can of course look up online or in your own personal Bible. The full reading, but Ed's going to read you some selections from it and adds his own personal flair.
Some things, yeah.
All right, go for it.
Well, the main thing here is that I was shocked by how long this reading is. Mm-hmm. So I had kind of lost track because the one after it is only one verse, I think. So we're going to really
it's like 4 lines.
Flip next week to something much, much briefer.
Yeah.
But I want to give just a little bit of personal history on this text.
Okay.
So in it would have been in 1980. That's a couple of years ago.
Just a few.
I was thinking about my future. And it had crossed my mind a couple of times that I might be interested in attending seminary, theological school. And so I went to Andover Newton Theological School in Newton Center, Massachusetts, which is no longer there. It's now Andover Newton at Yale. So they left that campus. But in 1980, it was thriving. I mean, it was a huge student body and the campus was active and wonderful faculty and all of it. So I went there for one of these 3-day introductions.
Okay.
And there was a man there on the faculty who was the dean, whose name was George Peck. I believe he was from Australia. And he preached a sermon on this text.
Okay.
And I was very intrigued by what he had to say. So this whole thing in Ezekiel 34, it's actually about bad shepherds and good shepherds. And the meaning here is don't be a bad shepherd. It's not good to be a bad shepherd. And the text is also interesting because God gets so fed up with the shepherds who are not taking care of the people of Israel. Basically, God steps in and says, I got to do this myself.
If you want something done right.
I'm not sure if this is the leadership model we want to follow. But anyway, so here is, after a very long, frustrating introduction, this is what God says. For thus says the Lord God, behold, I myself will search for my sheep and will seek them out. As a shepherd seeks out his flock when he is among his sheep that have been scattered, so will I seek out my sheep, and I will rescue them from all places where they have been scattered on a day of clouds and thick darkness. And I will bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries and will bring them into their own land. And I will feed them on the mountains of Israel by the ravines and in all the inhabited places of the country. I will feed them with good pasture. And on the mountain heights of Israel shall be their grazing land. There they shall lie down in good grazing land, and on rich pasture they shall feed on the mountains of Israel. I myself will be the shepherd of my sheep, and I myself will make them lie down, declares the Lord God. I will seek the lost, and I will bring back the strayed, and I will bind up the injured, and I will strengthen the weak. And the fat and the strong I will destroy. I will feed them in justice.
Wow.
That definitely caught my attention back in 1980.
It's two things catch my imagination. One, that you remember this.
It came back, amazingly.
Yeah.
Floated to the surface.
Because, I have a notoriously bad memory, so I can't remember stuff like that. I mean, it's incredible that you remember this. And it's incredible also that it is the reading for this Sunday that we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of your ordination.
Isn't that weird?
That's amazing. And the thing is, I know you, and I know you did not plan that.
I did not plan that.
I know you did not plan that.
I had no inkling that these two things were going to fall together, but I really had to laugh when I opened this up. First of all, because it was so long. And then the second, I thought, what was I thinking that I chose that whole thing?
Yeah.
That was part of it. And then the second thing is to think, here's this wonderful anniversary that the church has planned, and it's this text.
Yeah.
How can that be?
How can that be? Because I remember us sitting in staff meeting talking about, we were talking about the service for your ordination anniversary. And we're like, oh, and you were like, what is the reading set for that Sunday? You had no idea. So I went and looked up and I was like, oh, it's the reading of the Good Shepherd. You're like, oh, okay.
Yep.
We had no idea. We had no idea whatsoever.
There it is.
Very cool.
And that's something.
That is very something. Yeah, I like this idea of like, this idea of God like rolling up his sleeves, being like, all right, get in there myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's how many times have I heard this in my life, especially in my family, like, all right, I'm just going to do it myself.
Just do it myself.
I mean, you guys.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
wash the dishes myself. Don't you worry about it.
Just do it myself. Yeah.
So that's kind of what happens out of this. And, I do think that the memory that I carry with me from George Peck's comment about this is the end of this, where he says, I will seek out the lost. I mean, this is by the way, this is a political text, because in Israel, when there are references, especially in these great prophetic books of Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, when they use the word shepherd, they're also quite often referring to the king who is a king shepherd.
Okay.
Let's say a shepherdly king.
Okay.
Right? Someone who can be trusted to be looking out for the best interests of the people. So much so that this king's duty is to find the people who have somehow, for whatever reason, drifted off to the fringes of society. The lost, the strayed, the injured, the weak, all of those, who normally are displaced and then forgotten, dismissed. But not here, not in this vision. God is saying, this is how it's supposed to be done. So it's this fabulous vision. I think probably when I heard it back in 1980, I was thinking, this is really what the church is at its best. It's looking out for the ones who are disregarded. And I think the church is at its best when it does that. And it was just fun to come back and gratifying to come back to this passage. It's like a recentering moment to think, yeah, this is what really got me jazzed up a long time ago. And it still does. And so that's part of the additional background.
What do you think 20-something-year-old Ed was hoping for the most when he was entering seminary?
So I had definitely been very influenced through my growing friendships with a couple of clergy, a couple of Presbyterian clergy in upstate New York. They were very passionate about the church being outspoken about about these people who are disregarded, and about taking action on their behalf. Not only, let's say, what we might call philanthropic or charitable action, but getting to the root of the problem. Finding out, so why are people disregarded? Not only to give a helping hand, as important as that can be, but to ask the question, well, what would it be like if people could help, to enjoy the fruits of a system that's working on their behalf? So I think Ed, at the age of 20, would have said, I want to be involved in the church that's doing both of those things, directly related to people who need that help and assistance, but also directly related to the institutions and the policies that are not working on their behalf. And I think over the years, probably ministry has been the most satisfying for me when those two things have come together. And I feel like I've been very fortunate as I look back over the years that I have found myself in situations where I've been working alongside other people for whom that kind of work matters.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would have been thinking. I wanted to head that route.
It sounds like Ed all along kind of wanted to be a force for good.
I'd like to think so. And, actually, I think from very early on, I had this sort of drawn my eye was always kind of open for people who were in the classroom, kind of, who's that kid over there who just doesn't seem to connect with anybody? I don't know why that was. Maybe I felt myself a little bit on the outside. So was perhaps on the lookout for other people like myself.
Sure.
I think that's where a lot of it starts, right? For people, they care about something because they find out that it impacts someone else, and they say, hey, maybe we can figure this out together,
Right.
you know? But yeah, I think the vision of a church that is truly a force for good, that's still a really powerful vision. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Where do you think, so the question of the week says, God needs shepherds who will care for God's people.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you respond to God's job description for good shepherd? So what does this idea of being a good shepherd mean for people who are maybe not in church leadership? What does that mean for sort of our everyday people?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the one thing it says to me, these old texts, how old is this? I mean, this is 2,500 years old. It's been around for a long time. I think that we could easily transfer this into a secular environment. We might not use the term shepherd. Maybe we would use another term, one that's, that resonates with people today. We talk so much about teams these days and leaders. Maybe there's language there, but it's making sure that we understand that actually we have very old language to talk about the common good.
Yeah.
So if we just wanted to pick this up and shift it a little bit, I would say talking about the common good would be a great way. And that was Martin Luther King's vision, right? The beloved community. The other thing that's really striking about this that I would say in today's context is really important. It says, I will bring them out. So God is saying, I will seek out my sheep. So this is not a God who thinks, I'll see if anybody shows up at the clinic, at 2. Right. No, this is God who's saying, I'm going to seek out my sheep. I will rescue them from all places where they have been scattered on a day of clouds and thick darkness. Think about the people who've been scattered in our world, who are not living in their own homes or even their own countries because of the violence that was imposed upon them. And I will bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries and will bring them into their own land. So it's this vision of people who, if they cannot find security and safety where they are, they're going to be given that place somewhere, right? And I think that still speaks to people today, not only who are in need of homes, but people who want to be in the leadership position to provide that.
Right.
So that would be my sense of how the text can be transferred into a secular version.
Yeah, this idea that there's the action. It's not just like, well, here it is. It's that going out. It's that reaching out towards your neighbor. It's that going out and finding those who need the love and the care and the assistance and the friendship and the community. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think one thing that you've said there is really important, Leslie, is this going out part. There's a beautiful little book by a man named Bernard Ellard called The Outward Bound. And he said that, written into the DNA of communities of faith, Jewish and Christian, I would say, we all come out of that same tradition, but is this idea that we're outward bound. Okay. We're going out. Yeah. Right? We're not waiting for people to come to us. We're not waiting for the issue to show up at our doorstep. We're actually going out to where people are hurting and in need. I think that one of the things that started to happen in especially the last 40, 50 years, is actually we lost that sense of being outward bound. And I've heard, how many times have we heard, just in our church lives from early on, maybe up to now, is the sense that, why doesn't anybody come to church anymore?
Yeah.
Why doesn't anybody come to our building anymore? We got this amazing building. And how many times have I heard churches say that? And I would say, yeah, you do have an amazing building. But you know what? In this text, we are supposed to be going out into the world to find out what's going on, to put our ear to the ground, find out where people are in need, how we can respond to that. I think we really, really lost that. Somehow the church began to feel very entitled, like, why isn't anybody coming to us anymore? Why should they? Just my thought.
That's a pretty good thought. That's almost that inward. Like, oh, we're so special.
Right.
They should come to us.
We're baffled. Why can't everybody see how special we are?
Shiny.
What a,
Yeah.
what a mystery.
Yeah.
It has to be demonstrated in some way.
Yeah.
There's a really great movie I think it's called The Apostle. It's with Robert Duvall. And he plays a preacher. And he's a really difficult guy in this movie. And he does an awful thing. And he has to go on the run. And he winds up I think he goes to Bayou country. He's in Louisiana. He winds up in Louisiana. He goes to this little town. And he decides he's going to start up a church again. I mean, he's done this really bad thing. And it's sooner or later, you just know it's going to catch up to him. But he starts off in this new community, doesn't know anybody. I guess he talks to a couple of pastors. And he starts bringing food to people.
Oh, wow.
In the community. And very slowly people respond because they get to know him. He's a very engaging person. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole side of him that's really great. There's a whole side of him that's not so great.
Okay.
But it's a wonderful film in the way that it shows how that nourishing side of him really comes out. He has a genuine care for people when he doesn't have a violent temper. And so, he just follows this path and begins to build this congregation. But it's basically, he sees himself as a shepherd of the sheep.
Okay.
He just goes out into the community, doesn't make distinctions about people. He doesn't want to know whether people are Presbyterians or Baptists, he just wants to know, what are your hungers? Mm-hmm. And how can I help with that?
That's nice. And
it grows from that. It's a really interesting film. So anyway, I think about him as a flawed person who, and right up to the end of the movie, he is still kind of finding a way to reach out. Mm-hmm. And that's what this prophet is doing as well, talking about God as one who's going to consistently reach out. So I think embedded here is our job description.
I love that. Final thought for the day.
Final thought. Yeah, so in our memories may lie our hopes. So when we look back, as I do, what this text meant to me all the way back to 1980, there's actually a seed of a hope there of what I can still do and become as a pastor, but not only that, but what all of us who are connected in a faith community, how we can live that out too.
I love that. Thank you all so much for joining us today and every week. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillradio.org.
If you enjoyed this podcast, there are a few things that you can do that would make a big difference to us. Like the video, subscribe if you aren't, and click the notification bell and select all. Thank you.